All right, things are looking pretty good at my end, and yeah, I see the gameplay and some people in the chat already. All right, guys, I think it's good to go here. What's up, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of the Xbox Roundtable Podcast, your place on Sundays to kick back and listen to some Xbox talk and more. Hey, you know the drill, right? We're all about Xbox here. And you are listening to show number 219. Damn, I really can't believe it's at 219 already. Wow. Anyways, this is Invader, your host for the evening, and I'm looking forward to discussing all of the wonderful topics and news on the docket tonight. Certainly loads of Xbox-related news to talk about, rumors of multiple shows being discussed. I mean, of course, that's part of the course, but, it sounds like they're deliberating about a few things. As well, some talk about the initiative, a new trademark being listed by Bethesda, and some other stuff. But first, let me introduce you to everybody on tonight's panel. And joining us tonight is our friend, Mr. Crusader. Bud, great to have you back again. How are you doing?
It's good to be back on 2 weeks in a row. I'm doing good. I've been playing a lot of it's a modded Minecraft pack called FTB Interactions Feed the Beast. It's an expert mod pack for Minecraft. We're having a good time. A bunch of my friends and I are playing. So it's been a pretty good week.
All right. Glad to hear that. I'll admit I'm not like the biggest Minecraft guy in the world. I know obviously it's a massive game, but what kind of a mod is it, if you don't mind me asking?
It is an entire pack of stuff. So it's got magic, it's got technology, and the pack is called an expert pack because not only is it a bunch of mods, the mods are taken in such a way that the creator has rescripted a ton of crafting recipes to create an entire tree of progression and stuff like that. So you have to progress from era to era so that you can craft new machines or do new stuff with the magic mods and stuff like that. And everything interconnects and stuff. It's as a group it takes about 500 to 600 hours, not per player, but as a whole group of work to go in to beat it. The end goal is to get items that you could normally only get if you were in creative mode.
All right, sounds pretty cool. Definitely, some varied stuff there. Hey, let me know how those mods turn out for you. How you're enjoying them down the line. That's the thing, right? Trying out all those different mods. You get to sample all kinds of different things, different user created content. That's always cool. I like that stuff every now and then. Let's see, going down the list here onto the TXR panel members. Shockley buddy, hey, how you doing? I know you've been posting some stuff about your TV situation on Twitter there. How you been?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, when I saw that setup, before I bought my house, I was just like, I've seen the setup where someone put their CRT on the bottom. They had all their retro consoles, all their modern consoles, and they had their, big flat screen above the CRT. I'm like, that looked like the sickest setup, so I could just have everything connected to both TVs all at once. And then I did it. So I just have to put some of the shelving, but everything's mounted and put in place. So definitely, it's better than I imagined. This is the sickest setup to me. But using my closet space that I was not using in my office looks like a little theater room that I was custom made. But other than that, I've been playing Elden Ring. I've been because I really like Sekiro, but the kind of the linear part of that I enjoyed, that was at least I kind of knew where I was going, what I needed to do. With Elden Ring, it's kind of that Breath of the Wild thing where it's just okay, what do I do? Where do I go? So I have been following a cool, I forget the YouTuber's name. I think it's Fighting Cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
I've been following his guide. So his guide is kind of like a prep of hey, he's basically, it's like going to school. It's basically, he's prepping me with okay, you're going to have this weapon, with now you can do, put poison on your weapon. Basically he's going to get you ready to go out in the world and start. Not that you're going to be like over leveled, but you'll have like, some of the equipment you're going to need and not get totally destroyed. It's still going to be difficult and hard when you're going up against bosses, but you'll at least have, because I was getting my shit pushed in with some of those just basic NPCs, because you could miss the tutorial at the beginning. Totally missed it, walked right past it because I wanted to go out in the world. Found it. I'm like, oh, okay, that would have been nice if that would have been like, hey, tutorial this way. Like Sekiro, you can't miss it. Or Sifu, you can't miss it. It's right there. You can keep training and get better. So, I'm having more fun with it, and I think once I get through kind of just like prep and training, I'll be like, cool, I'm gonna actually enjoy the game. Once I'm prepped, it's gonna still be difficult and hard, but I'll at least it won't be feel like completely unfair and like I'm having a miserable time. So that's what I've been doing this past week.
All right. Getting some gaming in. That's awesome, man. Plus the setup. Love it. And further down the list here, Centurion Buddy. Hey, I know you've been taking it easy past, week, I guess, but otherwise, get in some gaming?
Oh, man, it is Sunday night, time to have some fun. My voice probably sounds like hell because I'm getting over a cold, but I am excited, man. I've been playing a lot of Dying Light 2. I can't stop playing it. I've been enjoying the game. I haven't ran into some of the problems that other people have. I guess I'm also more forgiving when it comes to some of the bad visuals of the game. I'm just enjoying the game loop. It's definitely a fun game if you enjoy Dying Light 1, but it's a total different experience from the first game.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. Again, I can't really say because I haven't played the first game, but I've been hearing, some mixed stuff. I have been seeing people enjoying the game. It's a little different. Like you've just been saying. So,
in the first game, it's like, let's just put it this way. In the first game, when you go out at night, and if you try to go out at night when you very first start the game, you'll pretty much get your ass handed to you by what comes out at night. But in Dying Light 2, it's almost like incentivized for you to go out into the nighttime of the game, like right off the get-go, because it's like two different worlds at day and night now. And yeah, definitely there was a lot of gameplay mechanics that are totally different from the first game for sure.
All right, good to know if I ever get my hands on it. And all right, I'll give it a go. Guys on the chat, let me know how your experiences are with Dying Light if you've been playing it. If you agree with Centurion's point, or just any other little differences that you might notice. Let's see. Tim Dog, I will not be making it tonight because of, he mentioned this on Twitter because of a recent passing. I just didn't feel up to coming. And MLD may or may not be coming later on just because of some scheduling things. But, it sucks when people, obviously in the community, you get to know all these personalities, get to interact, whether it be different events and, even just through social media. But, first I wanted to take some time to address the passing of a prominent Xbox YouTube community member. A person he goes by the name of, he went by the name of Kalel, the creator of the Inner Circle podcast. He passed away very recently. And while I didn't know him personally, I did follow him. Many others certainly did, like Tim Dog and many others, and other members of the show. It's just, again, it's always a shame when we lose such bright and passionate creators. So if you could please keep him and his family in your prayers and heart. I mean, while it's a loss, he will be remembered by many. Obviously, the Inner Circle podcast has been around for quite a while. I mean, you can go back and check their stuff. It's very influential. Had a lot of good shows, and again, it's a sad day, but he will be remembered. Just again, it's a shame when stuff like that happens. But he was a good guy. He was a very good guy. But yeah, guys, on to topics, and let's kick things off by talking about some mighty interesting rumors making the rounds. Over the past week, few weeks, we've been talking about how Xbox will spread out its shows, and it looks like we're starting to get a clearer picture of that. Our friends over at Xbox Era are saying that there will be 2 big events scheduled for May and September. However, Venture Beats Jeff Grubb, he did chime in saying that there's supposed to be one in June, not May, which, again, it's interesting. We should know more in the coming days, weeks. I'm curious what everyone's thoughts on this are. Centurion, I'll hit you up first. Because of the situation around the world, the past, well, let's just say 2 years at this point, we've seen different structures to these, to these shows and events. Do you think we'll see the so-called traditional E3 show date, or will it be more spread out?
That is actually a really good question. I have been pondering that question ever since it came up. And to be honest, I'm really seeing it be more spread out. I mean, I hate to say it. I'm going to just be upfront. I am not a big fan of Jeff Keighley's Summer of Games because sometimes it's just way too spread out and there's just a lot, and I mean a lot of mindless filler. And when I'm not trying to say mindless as a negative, but when I say mindless is there's a lot of filler that could definitely be done better. It just doesn't have a place in the manner that it is. And I've noticed that a lot of companies are spreading it out. If memory serves me right, last year for Summer of Games, Xbox kicked it off with like a show focused at independent developers and smaller game titles. Right at the very beginning of the kickoff of the Summer of Games with Jeff Keighley. And then they did have another show that was the big show that was kind of a more reveal for the bigger titles around that E3 date that everybody's used to, around late June, early July. And I really do see them probably more than likely holding to the same I don't even want to say technique, but the same schedule as they did last year, about how they just spread everything out. Everybody got their time. But I do hear and actually listen to a lot of people that really do miss those days of where it was like E3, where you went there on Friday and it was these guys, Saturday it was these guys, Sunday you had the big show, you had a couple other stuff on Monday and Tuesday. But now we're somehow spreading it out over months and months and months, and sometimes you could potentially fatigue it. So I really don't know if that's a good idea to do it or not.
All right, that's a fair point. Anybody else have any thoughts on this? Crusader, what do you think about what's being spread around so far, the rumor mill?
So, I think that there is a possibility for special Nick's thing to be partially true. I don't think that their big show is going to be in May and September. I think that they might have smaller shows planned for then. More akin to Stoney's State of Plays, where it's like one game as a focus and maybe a couple other games being shown, like the smaller things. I do think that at least this year we're going to have the big showcase in June, like we normally do. I don't think that's ever going to go away, even if they're not part of E3. I think they're always going to have their big June showcase. Now that they're more prepared for it, to do it without or with the ESA, since COVID happened. And then I do think that we are going to get a second show this year. I do think EXO is going to come back.
Right.
I think they're going to try their hardest to bring EXO back for this December. And like I've been on the train that they only need big show-wise 2 a year. They only need big show-wise 2. They just need some little things like the State of Plays Sony State of Plays to happen throughout the year. And realistically, the only thing that's limiting them from doing that right now is game releases. They're slowly getting into the cycle where they're releasing more and more. And by the end of this year, I think they are going to be very close to that goal that they had of one game releasing every quarter. I believe that's something that both Matt Booty and Phil Spencer and a few other people have said that's their goal, is one large release a quarter. And if they do that, then that means you can get a state of play like show, or the Sea of Thieves thing that they did in January. You can get stuff like that every other month or even once a month, depending on what's releasing live service wise versus what's releasing as a bespoke singular title, brand new title. I think they can get into a flow where we're going to get more shows, but I think they're going to stick to the 2 big showcases a year. And I think that they've wanted to do 2 showcases a year, even during COVID. But XO is such an in-person event. It always was. They move it around the world every time. If you go on Wikipedia and you look up the history of XOs, they're all in different locations because they want to have a big event for the Xbox community, and they always want it to be in a different locale so different fans can go. So I understand why they haven't had them since, I think the last one was 2019, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we didn't have one in 2020, and we didn't have one in 2021. I didn't know if we had a 2019 one or not. But because I mean, you do that, you have, because each of those showcases are usually 1 to 2 hours, and they're the typical jam-packed full of content. And if you remember correctly, Bethesda used to have their own E3 conference even outside of Xbox. So I don't think we're going to have to worry about the content being dry at those anymore, because Bethesda was able to hold their own, and Microsoft realistically was able to hold their own. Some years was better than others, but I mean, every brand has had good and bad years at E3. So I think ultimately we are going to have the big somewhere between May and July showcase, and we're going to have somewhere between like a November and January showcase.
Yeah, that's fair. And you bring up a good point about Bethesda's show, because again, Xbox is able to have all these separate shows under the various like big publishing branches that they have now. They didn't have that luxury before, but now they can spread things out a bit more. With Bethesda, even at the popular conventions that they host to, like a QuakeCon, for example, right? You might get some little tidbits there. But even Bethesda's show, like, it doesn't even have to be technical. I mean, they probably will have something in June, I would imagine, for the, quote unquote E3. But again, like, Xbox doesn't necessarily have to do it all like in the same day, same week, that kind of thing.
What wasn't both the Doom games were announced at QuakeCon, weren't they? Because wasn't there the big thing that they showed Doom and then asked all of the people at QuakeCon to not talk about it? Like, there was like an audience of like 300 people, and they asked them not to talk about Doom 2016 until they officially announced it a week later. And literally all of the people kept quiet about it. I think it's a big story. Back in the day, back in like 2014, when they were rebooting Doom. So it's not remember. Like they do announce things at QuakeCon. I know Doom 2016 first appeared at QuakeCon. So like, they're gonna have BlizzCon eventually, with the Activision merger, and they could turn that into an Activision, Blizzard, and King showcase, and have that at some time of the year. So it's not like we're gonna have a lack of showcases. I just think that people need to be a little bit, and I know we hate being patient. We've been patient forever, but like, look at what we're getting. Like, just look at how much Microsoft's investing into this, and we're gonna be getting great showcases. We're gonna be getting great games for Game Pass. It's gonna take time for all of the studios to get settled, for COVID to the effects of COVID to stop hampering development and the showcases and things like that. And once everything normalizes, I think that there's going to essentially be non-existent. Like, dry spells will be non-existent. There's just so much. You look at it and there is so much.
Yeah, would they do something like, I remember in 2020 when, again, everything was just happening, they did have the separate shows for third party, I think it was in May, and then they focused on their first party in like June or July.
Yeah, they could do that. I think that third party event has evolved, though. I think that that's become their ID at Xbox show. And aren't we getting one of those in like a week?
Yeah, actually.
Did they announce one?
Yeah, I think it's this coming week. Yeah, we'll be
so
getting,
and I guarantee people are going to be upset with that. I'm just going to call it now because I think it's going to be a 4-hour show, and I think the indie developers are each going to be given 15 minutes to talk about their game, which is something that, like, you know, if you're going into it expecting something else than that, I don't know what to tell you. I think that it's great that they're giving these indie developers the time to speak. I hope they break it up and you can watch the individual segments on the YouTube channel this time, because they didn't do that the first time. But I'm just going to warn anyone listening now. That's probably what this show is going to be. It's going to be each indie development studio is going to get between 5 and 15 minutes to talk. They're going to show off indie games, and then there'll be breaks in between where they show off just regular trailers for indie games. It's if indie games aren't your cup of tea and learning about game development aren't your cup of tea, I would just wait for the highlights.
Well, I love some indie games for sure. I mean, a lot of people know that listening, and you know, I like to experiment with indie games too. I mean, there's some phenomenal ones, obviously. My only thing is, I hope they learned from last year, and you know, hopefully, you know, the
hosts
Twitch.
are better.
Yeah, with the
hosts are better.
Yeah, the hosts and, you know, the Twitch streamers aren't necessarily the best hosts per se, and you know, they might not be as you know, educational about the game, be able to put in a lot of input, or they might not understand something when they're demoing the game. And well, let's be honest, a lot of people just don't want to stick around for, you know, like an hour to, you know, see a game.
Yeah.
So, but I love learning about it.
Yeah, have the devs talk about it. Don't cut back and be like, "Hey, what'd you like?" Have two streamers talk about, "Hey, yeah, that looked good." No, just cut that out, and then just be like, "Hey, show off the game. Cool." If you want to have the dev talk about, okay, what is this game? You know, they're passionate about it. Cool, because people still are intrigued by that. But when you cut back and it's like 10 minutes, and I'm just gonna sit here and watch streamers just talk about a couple of the games they just saw, and like no one cares.
Yeah,
they'll they'll do that after, but they'll go to YouTube and they'll go to that person's page and they can tell them what they thought about it.
Now they did do some cool ones where they had the streamers interviewing the devs, and some of those were good because the streamers knew how to interview, and some of them were bad because the streamers didn't know how to interview.
Right.
You give the streamer a script and you have them ask the specific questions, and that's it. And maybe add a little bit of their own personal flair. But you give them a script of the questions that the developers want asked. You let them ask those, and I think that'd make for a good show, because Twitch is like co-partnering this, so they're going to be involved in some way. But yeah, I hope that they get the hosting better, because that was the only thing that I thought was bad about the last event. I just had it on in the background, and
it was like over 3 hours long.
Yeah,
it was 4.5 hours long.
That's the mindlessness I'm talking about. Is like, it's not the content that's given to you, but it's how it's delivered to you.
Yeah. I think they should break them up and do it over the course of a week. You know, if you're gonna have 4 hours of stuff to show, that's fine. You know, you want to interview each of the dev studios making it for 15 minutes and let them talk about their stuff. Cool. Break it up into hour chunks.
Do a Nintendo Direct, and then do a tree house after, like how they do it, and they can talk with the dev and like, oh, we're playing this game. What's this part? Cool. If someone is intrigued by one of those games, then they can go watch that later.
That's actually a brilliant solution to it. Make the first 30, 40 minutes of it the actual showing of each of the games.
Game after game, like a Nintendo Direct.
And then you can have 3.5 hours afterwards where each of the developers gets to talk. And the people who are very interested in that, like myself, I'll have a great time watching it, you know? Yeah. People who just want the trailers.
Think about it. Nintendo Directs, some Nintendo Directs, if that was 3 to 4 hours long, they would be terrible.
Yeah.
But since they made it 10 minutes, oh, okay, cool. That wasn't that bad. And then maybe I'll check out that game. It looks kind of cool. But if I had to sit through 3 to 4 hours to find that in the middle, I would have been pissed about sitting there watching that whole thing. Then it gets you a bad taste in your mouth, and you're like, oh, what? You know, I'm never even going to watch these again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned the Nintendo Directs, because I keep looking back at them, and for the most part, I do enjoy them. Their pacing's usually good, and again, the developer commentary, it's not too long, it's not too short.
Just don't waste your time.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know, it seems to work really well. I know, like, Sony has their state of plays, but they're a little bit different. They don't usually run as long, but they usually only focus on a couple of well, a couple of games per se. I mean, actually, the last one, I don't know if you guys caught the last day of play a couple of days ago. It wasn't too good.
Because what they have, the state of plays are their short ones where it's like supposed to be like one game is the focus, and then they show like 4 to 5 other games. Then what's the other one called? They do have another one where they're the longer ones where like they actually announce stuff. Like when they announced Spider-Man 2, they announced like the Star Wars game. That's actually I know they call it something different. I can never keep that one straight.
I think that was a state of
Is it
play as well. I think it
Was
was just when they showed off God of War Ragnarok, and I think it was just I think that was I don't think there was another name.
I can't remember if it was
Look it
either a state of play or at Gamescom. Now that I think of it.
Oh yeah, maybe it was Gamescom.
I mean, I want to say it was just a regular state of play.
It was either
but-
state of play or it was Gamescom. It was something like that, or Sony Experience or something.
Sony Experience
Sony
used to be their once a year show, but they like stopped doing those, and I'm frustrated because I liked them a lot.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
used to go to the movie theater and watch their E3.
Hmm.
You get some cool swag and stuff. But
PlayStation showcases. They call them the PlayStation Showcase.
yeah, I was thinking it was
alright.
something
That's what
like
they're called.
kind of like EXO. It was like some.
Yeah,
I knew there was some other show that they had.
They're like their E3 style events that they haphazardly do whenever they have enough content to show.
Mhm.
The last one was the one where that started with Knights of the Republic, and then they finally showed gameplay for God of War.
I'm sorry, were we just trying to figure out PSX?
Yeah.
That was the symbols when they would have the experiences. I remember the PSX like logo.
Because it went away, I think, and they just brought it back. I think this past.
Dude, I haven't seen a PSX in God, what? 3-4 years?
I think they stopped the PSX branding when they pulled it out of E3, I believe. And now they just call their larger showcases that are like an hour long the PlayStation showcases, and the smaller ones are the state of plays.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Shockley Buddy, what do you think of Xbox possibly like having like either a May or a June event, also a September event? Like, do you think they have enough content in the works for that, or do you think that it's a good idea having those types of shows? Like, what are your thoughts on all this? What's being said?
Yeah, I mean, I think the September one would sound good because probably around that time. I mean, there's been no official word of a delay for Redfall, so I'm not sure when they were planning. Maybe that's when they were going to show it off on like something like a May show or something, because it's supposed to come out like in the somewhere falling in the summer, so it could be at the very end of summer or whenever. So I could see them showing that off on like the May one because they wouldn't need to put it on the E3. I guess they could still, depending on when it's supposed to come out, because all they ever said was summer. So who knows?
Well, presumably, unless it doesn't get delayed, right?
Yeah, I mean, but those early shots of it looked like someone could have been running that on like demoing it, but depending on what they're running on, it looks like it was chugging. But who knows? If I ran Red Dead on my older PC, it looked like shit too. It looked great in some of the stills, because some of the stills it looked, oh, this looks pretty cool. But when you saw it in motion, it was kind of like, ooh, this kind of shit.
Right.
As someone who's done a little bit of testing for like games that are like NDA very early in development, they almost always look bad because they've done literal, like, there are art animations just straight up missing. There are there's no optimization. There's nothing like that because they're just, you're usually testing like a specific system. They want you to say, hey, how does the economy feel, or hey, how does this boss fight feel in particular, and so they can get an idea of like what might need to be changed in the game at large. And you almost always get a bad version of the game, and that's what that was. That was what it's from. It was leaked from a QA development. Thing.
And that was like old. That was old too. That was like September.
Yeah,
I think it said last year. So that is, it might be representative of the gameplay, but I would not take visuals or performance. Just plus, I've never seen Arcane show off like had a bad.
Yeah,
showing.
no.
So, but I mean, the last one, the September one, they probably was going to happen at E3. They'll show off like, have Todd Howard kind of talk a little bit more about, kind of like how he did with Fallout 4 when they first showed it off at E3. And then maybe they'll have a September show where they go like just full blown, show you even more. Because there's probably that game is probably going to be, you know, massive. They've been working on it so long. And we've just seen like what Elden Ring's world is just when you think you've, you know, like, oh, this map's pretty big. And you're like, oh, okay, it's even bigger than, and even more so. You just keep finding more and more of the map keeps opening. You're like, okay, how far does this actually go? So I'm sure, especially with that being space, you know, and it's going to have like, well, people call it like Skyrim in space. So there should be like almost like an endless amount of like, I don't know how you put boundaries on a universe. Like if we're allowed to go, I don't know if it's going to be like No Man's Sky where you're just like going in and out of worlds, but I'm sure they'll have a ton of content to show, but they'll probably also have a ton of indies that they've also backed. Hopefully they can show off more. We know Stalker 2 got delayed, so maybe that won't see it at E3, but you might see some of that to show because it'll be coming out a few months closer. If they show that off in September.
I wouldn't expect to see Stalker because they've stopped development. They're in Ukraine.
Oh, they did? They said that they did?
They've paused it completely because they're working on like making sure their staff survive the conflict.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if they were doing a lot of remote work anyway. And
no.
Okay.
I would just expect that game to be pushed back well into next year, unfortunately. So
2023, maybe even 2024 now. Like,
see, that's just a tough spot where Xbox is in, where people are like, where are the games? There's still no games until the end of the year. Although Sony had pretty much the same issue last year. They just had the games at the beginning of the year, other than the Deathloop timed exclusive that they, money added.
Well, to be fair though, I mean, there's already a whole bunch of games that they announced like a year or two ago that we still haven't gotten any updates on. So, plus all the other studios that haven't announced like whatever IP. I mean, we're still waiting on Compulsion, for example, and a few others. They have content.
Well, think about it. We just saw God of War gameplay for the very first time. And if you think about it, that game came out, the last one came out when Xbox made the initiative, created it, or bought those studios, was first buying those studios 2018. And we just got just a few months back, got the first glimpse of any gameplay from an established, a studio with a great pedigree versus like, they don't have anything like that. Like Playground's great, but like they're also tackling their first open world non-racing game. So from that field of people that they got in 2018, because that's what people also forget. Like, where are the games? They bought these Bethesda last year. Or they'll think like, hey, they bought them in the year before that, because that's not actually when they bought them. They got them March last year. But again, you have to think about, hey, the Ghostwire Tokyo, Deathloop, those are Sony already deals made in stone, and it's going to take time. It took forever for Horizon Forbidden West to come out. That was 2017. Breath of the Wild. We still haven't seen any actual like gameplay of that. Is that even going to make it this year? Who knows? That came out in the same year as the last Horizon. So it's like people got to understand that games actually take time. But unfortunately, Xbox just hasn't had games, so it looks even worse. That's their issue. And then their game that looked the best, that everybody was like, "Oh damn, that looks really good." Stalker, unfortunately, are in the battle. Unfortunately, hopefully they stay safe, but they're in the middle of a freaking war. So
yeah, well, even
what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and the same thing can go with like Atomic Heart. It's made by a Russian studio. Who knows what the heck is going to...
X, who knew Remedy was going to drop the ball in a massive way like that?
Is the single player any good?
I hear it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's nothing.
Okay. Because Remedy didn't make the multiplayer. That was Smilegate.
That was Smile. See, a lot of people, they played the Smilegate beta when Phil came out, like, hey, the multiplayer's coming for Crossfire, and like, oh, okay, cool. A lot of people played it, and they were like, okay, cool, not gonna ever touch that again. But when the E3 they had after that, that's when they were like, wait, Remedy's making a single player campaign to go with it, and then you were like, oh shit, okay, well, Remedy just made Control. They're good. Okay, well, in that trailer, a lot of people watched it. You watched the streams. They were like, oh shit, that looks kind of cool. It looked pretty sweet. And then we didn't hear anything about it. And then they dropped this, and like that was it. I thought it was going to be a pretty good full-fledged campaign, not a $20 single player game.
Yeah. Yeah,
We didn't
same.
know what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, they were very vague about it. They didn't talk about it for a while. It's interesting because I actually kind of like the campaign portion that was able to be played. It's all right. I mean, I would say that it's worth kind of playing, but it's not. Again, like they're breaking it up, right? Because I think the first one was called Catalyst or something, and there's gonna be more to it. It's just again, it's broken up. But the
the other piece is out. You have to buy it.
Yeah, and if you don't like necessarily the campaign, it's like, okay, you got the multiplayer, but the multiplayer, the aiming's kind of janky. I don't know if they fixed it recently, and also
it's budget CS:GO.
Yeah,
that's not.
And you only have like a couple of maps on a couple of modes. It's very limited, and I really want to know like what the heck happened with the quality control with this game with between Xbox, Smilegate, Remedy's end actually doesn't seem to be as bad. They seem to have actually done a pretty good job considering, but again, the marketing was kind of dropped on this one too. You'd think that you would be pushing a Remedy like campaign. Oh, a game made by Remedy. But again, nothing was really hyped up about it. That immediately kind of drew red flags in my head, not hearing about it. So it's too bad. I mean, again, like if I suggest if people want to try it out, they're more than welcome to. I mean, it's a very passable kind of campaign. It's all right, that portion, but just don't go into it expecting Call of Duty or anything like that. So
okay,
we're getting to that point. Where it's going to be like game after game after game. Like obviously, if Arcane hits like they're supposed to with Redfall, if that hits, like obviously they felt good enough that they wanted to go without any gameplay, wanted to go out and give us a date. So they should feel at least somewhat pretty confident that they're going to hit at least 2022. And then we know that Todd Howard's pedigree. He didn't show gameplay until just a few months, and I have faith and trust in him because he's done it over and over. So if those games,
they gave us a date.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if Starfield's like a banger, like how even if you didn't like Fallout 4, it crushed everything. That's the reason why Rise of the Tomb Raider was a complete afterthought and did terrible in sales. Like it still crushed. And it was still a great game. Like it just may have not was on coming off of Las Vegas or New Vegas. It probably wasn't like the leap that you wanted, but it was still a solid game. So if Starfield's a banger, and then I'm sure some of their games that they did invest in back in 5-6 years ago with those newer studios, whether it's like Perfect Dark. Or Hellblade looks like they backed that up recently, and they said no, that was actual gameplay. It wasn't just because people were saying, oh, that was just like a quick time or like what do you call it, like a staged. It's like no, that was actual gameplay. So I mean, we'll see. But if that was, then well, shit, that looks pretty good. Maybe that comes out in 2020, end of 2023. Like so, it seems like they're gonna eventually, with the amount of studios they have, games are gonna be coming eventually when they hit. So.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they picked up Bethesda when they didn't get Bethesda before Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo got money had it. Otherwise, you would have had Deathloop coming out. You would have had a better year for Xbox than Sony, and last year, and then you would have had Ghostwire Tokyo dropping early this year, Redfall summer, Starfield the end. You would have had Stalker 2. Like they're lining stuff up, so it's not like they're ignoring their fans. They're. Unfortunately, the world's in, a shit place sometimes. So shit's not, it's just a bad. Hey, I play more my Xbox than my Switch. The Switch has been like, unless you like Pokemon, everything's great and Metroid, but otherwise most of their year is kind of, they don't have Elden Ring and other things to back them up when there's nothing else to play. Like Xbox has plenty to play. Scarlet Nexus.
Yeah,
those are Verizon. Like you have games to play, so
yeah, they're gonna miss out on a lot of third party. But yeah, I mean, I do think that we're gonna see again more shows from them, more variety, focusing on different aspects. Different whether it be first party, third party, whatnot. They have a lot of content in the pipelines. Speaking of which, we have a super chat from Carlos Alvarado for $1.99. Thank you very much, Carlos. It's appreciated. XBX needs a roadmap yearly. Can't be at E3 or end of 2022. Well, I mean, I think we're going to get to that point, Carlos. I mean, I understand totally what you mean. It sucks when there's not a lot of communication at certain points, but I think that, again, given the circumstances, devs have just started really going into their offices within the last few months. Things seem to be returning back to normal and hopefully normal types of development. We should be getting a better layout, a better roadmap. I would say maybe not this year, but into the next year. I would have a little bit of patience when it comes to the development right now. But again, I'm not hurting on games. I still have the backlog, as I talk about often. I just beat Ratchet and Clank, the latest one. Good game, by the way. But I'm literally sifting through like piles of games. So, but there is a lot to.
That new Final Fantasy game's dropping this month. Mm-hmm. There's a 6,000 point punch card in those reward points. Grab that. Demo's out too, so that looks pretty fire. So I'm like, you got shit to play. But yeah, unfortunately, they do need to step it up and give us better roadmaps. I totally agree.
Yeah.
THQ Nordic does this cool thing at their shows where they, at the end of the show, they're like, we just showed this many games. We have announced this many games, and we have this many total games in active development, right? I'd love to just get that at the end of an Xbox showcase, right? Yeah. Hey, we just showed you 50 games. Xbox, across all of the Xbox family of studios, we have this many games in development currently. That would be awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment for sure. I do think that there is, definitely a strong conversation about that for sure. And I think that Xbox is listening. It's gonna, maybe not this year, but I think we will start to be getting better roadmaps towards the end of the year, if not next year. So just a tiny bit, a little bit of patience. Let's see, guys. I think we'll move on to some other bits of news, and let's see what else is on the docket here. Oh, yeah. So we all know that over the last year, guys, Xbox Game Studios has had a bunch of well-received games. Well, earlier this week, review aggregator Metacritic put out their list of top game publishers, with Xbox Game Studios topping its list, beating out lots of traditionally strong rivals like, again, Sony and so on, Nintendo. I am really dying to know the panel's thoughts on this. I guess you will call it a milestone. Crusader, but I'll hit you up first on this one. We're used to other publishers really leading in these types of charts, if I'm to be completely honest. But is this a considerable watershed point in time for Xbox, would you say?
So I think the bigger deal is the amount of games that they had at a high score this year. Not even so much that the games were a high score, because most Xbox games are 80 plus, with a few exceptions. I do think that overall you're still going to see Xbox's average be lower, not because they're going to put out lower quality games, but because when you're creating so many games within your first party, and then you're publishing through third party, you have a lot more chances to do great things. You also have a lot more chances to do poor things. And especially with Game Pass, they're going to be doing, with their third party publishing, and then some of the smaller studios like Double Fine, they're going to be doing a lot of very experimental things. And those can either go really well or really poorly. Like, look at Bleeding Edge with Ninja Theory. That was not great.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting that you're going to see as many quality games from Xbox as all of their competitors, maybe even a few more, just because of how many studios they have. Whether or not their averages will always be higher or not is, when you have so many games, like there's a chance that one of them's not going to do well, and that brings your average down. And I really don't like aggregate website because I'm a mathematician and a computer scientist by trade, and the aggregate sites do this thing where they take all of the different scales and they convert them all to a 1 out of 100 scale, right? Even though people like Jeff Grubb do their scale 1 out of 5, and a 1 out of 5 is more like a through F, from like, getting graded in high school, where a 1 is realistically the range between 0 and 59, like a failing grade. So a 1 does not equal a 20. Does that make sense if you were to convert it to a 100 scale?
Okay.
But
yeah.
Metacritic treats it as such, right? Because like a 5-star review, a 5-star, like the 5-star is probably equivalent to a 90 to 100. Whereas like it being a 1-star, a 1-star could be like a 0 through a 59. You don't really know what their rating systems, how they're using them. Because if their rating system is like A through F, that doesn't equate to 1 to 100. Does that make sense? Like the categories don't break up evenly.
Right. Yeah.
And then your other thing is they're using different rubrics. What is Digital Foundry considering important in their review versus, say, like Windows Central? Like there's no standardized rubric.
Right.
So the aggregate doesn't mean much to me as a mathematician because they're not all using the same system to grade. Both numerically and like actually judging it. They're not using the same system. So
Yeah.
I like the aggregate sites to tell me roughly, is this game good or bad, right? Like if it's above a 75, it's good and I'll consider playing it. If it's below 75, then it's bad and I really need to look more into it. The other thing I like them for is I can get all my reviews in one place. So the people that like, I have like 5 or 6 sites that I like to read the reviews from.
Right.
So I can get them all in one place. But I do think it's good that Microsoft had really high scores this year. Individual scores I don't really care about. But it was a very, very good year. We had so many good games come out. Were all of them exclusive? No, I don't. They weren't. But guess what? They were all on Game Pass except for Deathloop, and Deathloop's going to be on Game Pass this year. So I'm playing good games. I'm paying for them at a very cheap rate. It was a great year for me as a consumer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm done.
Well, I have to say, like, Metacritic itself, like the aggregators, I try not to bring them up a lot per se because I agree with a lot what you're saying there. Obviously, different people, different sites, they weight things differently, or they may be bugged about, I don't know, maybe they're bugged more about certain narrative aspects of game rather than gameplay or vice versa. Again, they weight things differently, so it's a matter of opinion, of course. You just hope that, again, they bring up a lot of certain things, a lot of complaints that, okay, maybe I could see, if it's weighted, if they bring up a bunch of certain things that seem to be a common issue, that, yeah, I either stay away from that game or I wait a bit and so on until things get fixed. But I mean, usually, it is a good idea just to see, oh, okay, this game's doing pretty well. Maybe I should check that out, right? And I mean, overall, I mean, for Xbox, yeah, I mean, it was pretty good. If you look at what was leading here in like the 90s for the Metacritics overall, you got Forza Horizon 5, Psychonaut 2, Microsoft Flight Simulator. I mean, I can vouch for those games personally. I played them. They're pretty awesome games in their own genres. The only one that kind of drops below a bit, but not by much, is Halo Infinite at 87. But that's still, I mean, that's still fairly decent. But then again, I like games that, I don't know, again, like I have my own judgments. Of course, we all have those. I'm guilty of liking games that have, I've seen Metacritics for like 65s, 70s, and so on. I mean, those are still pretty good in my opinion. It's just a matter of personal taste. But yeah, the overall meta for the 2021 games is 87.4, which, again, if you're looking at Microsoft Game Studios, that's scoring very well, considering, I mean, they didn't have a lot of first-party games, but they really hit the nail on the head with them. I just hope that, in the coming year or so, we see increased quality from, the likes of Bethesda and ZeniMax Studios, Starfield is obviously going to be a big game, their big game at the end of the year. I'm curious, Centurion, what do you have thoughts on here for, Metacritic and whatnot? Please go into detail. I would love to know your thoughts because I know that you have plenty of them.
Well, I have been openly against how Metacritic works for a very long time, and I think Crusader hit the nail on the head better than I've ever heard anybody explain it. I do not like how Metacritic works. They have a very top secret algorithm that is completely flawed because of the number one problem that Crusader pointed out. Not everybody grades on the same scale. And we have also determined at a time that sometimes reviewers do grade on a curve. It does happen. So I don't like how Metacritic has been used for, I would not work for a company that looked me in the face and told me that I would get a bonus if I scored a certain Metacritic score with my product. I'd be like, what the hell? I've never heard of an industry that basically your life revolves around some website scoring system. But that being said, could you imagine 5 years ago holding this conversation? If you were able to just all of a sudden pop in a TXR podcast from 5 years ago and be like, hey, Microsoft is going to own Bethesda. They're going to be in the ring to own Activision. And in 2021, they're going to be number one for Metacritic scores. You would completely think that somebody is completely lying. Microsoft has really, really changed the direction of the narrative that was taken from when the Xbox One was originally launched in 2013 to now. The narrative is totally, totally different. And it's great to see what Microsoft has done. It's doing nothing but benefit us consumers. We're going to see more great games come out, and we're going to see even better scores come out. I really hope Microsoft is able to push that number higher. Because you guys just mentioned it. We're going to have Starfield and other great games come out that are going to potentially drive that number higher for 2022. And it's going to be a really great time for us gamers with some really great gaming experiences. Microsoft is really starting to fire on all cylinders. And it's going to be interesting to see what really is going to happen this generation between Microsoft, PlayStation, and all the other players that are wanting to throw their hat in the ring. We truly have a very competitive generation starting to take place this year, and it's going to be very interesting to watch it unfold.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the end of this year is going to be very interesting. The first half of this one, again, because of the conditions of how things are with any of the publishers, not just Microsoft, but again, it's gonna be a little light. However, the end of the year, from what I can tell, it's gonna finish strong. We don't know how Redfall is gonna fit in here. I mean, we heard originally summer 2022, but we will see what happens there.
When I say it's getting competitive, is I don't mean like the market's going to be flooded with games.
Oh, yeah.
But it just seems like all the big players are on an even playing field right now, and not one company has a larger advantage over the other.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a fair assessment. That's certainly a fair assessment. Shockley, buddy, what's your thoughts on Xbox topping this Metacritic list? Again, just also your overall thoughts on Metacritic too, I guess, because, I mean, obviously, Crusader, Centurion, and myself, we're not huge per se on Metacritic, but, I mean, it is useful for gauging some things in any case, and it's good. It is good, in my opinion, to see that, obviously, Xbox is performing well overall, right, in reviews, but please, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good source to find, all of your at least top publication reviews if you're just trying to find them for a game. But yeah, unfortunately, when we all look at that score, and sometimes whether you like it or not, it's gonna sway you one way, even if you don't bother to read a lot of the reviews. But yeah, unfortunately, some people's scores aren't gonna. People are like, "Hey, you gave," Jeff Grover was getting into it with people. They're saying, you gave this game a 60, so you're." I'm like, no, I gave it a 3 out of 5. It's like, well, it's the same thing. It's like, well, it's kind of not, but but then a lot of people that do give scores. I think Jeff Gerstmann was talking about like giving like we should get away from like giving scores in general. Just give your overall like, hey, here's my feelings of the game. You know, so you can tell like someone is super enthusiastic, or if they're like, yeah, it's I'm gonna have a lot of fun with it, because that's all that matters. Because you'll play a game and it may not be what you would think of like a, because people give like 10 out of 10s, and some people a 10 out of 10 has to be perfect. Some people, like with Elden Ring, that got a lot of 10s, didn't have to be perfect, but it has. But if they can make a huge leap to what you're used to playing in some of these open world games, then if something's like feels like not well, sometimes groundbreaking, but like something that just kind of makes like, oh, I haven't seen or experienced games like in a game like in this way that's open world, or thing like Breath of the Wild when it came out, you're like, oh crap, I can actually traverse on like every piece of object. You could climb like every mountain. You usually couldn't do that in a lot of games. You'd be playing Skyrim and then you slide down a mountain. If it was like too steep, you couldn't just keep climbing. So stuff is going to mean different scores are going to mean different scores to other people. So like the whole score thing is just kind of, in some publications they're weighted more than others. So that part's like not even equal. It doesn't even, if you average out all the scores, it doesn't even come out to this correct number. So it just gets more thrown around of like, poking fun at things like, like, hey, look at, this game got this, like when gear like it's more for fun and for Twitter wars is what it's more useful out, these days, as far as the number itself. Like everybody was shitting on Gears and was like, hey, Death Stranding is going to just destroy it. And then when Death Stranding fell below Gears 5 Metacritic score, we all had fun with it because all the shit that we were hearing about this Death Stranding game. So other than that, that's all Metacritic has really turned into at this point. Because you even look at their movies, the movies doesn't really match up. Not that Rotten Tomatoes is perfect, but I feel like with like you'll see a movie that gets like really high rating and it's getting a ton of high praise, but it doesn't. Most even great movies that come out in the year, it doesn't equal out to like a 9. You won't see a movie with a 90 Metacritic, just because, kind of like what Crusader was saying, because they give it on a different scale. They're like, hey, it's 4 out of 5. It's a great movie, but maybe it's not like some people has to be like a Godfather Part 2 type movie for them to give you a 5. So 4 is still a great, awesome, amazing movie to them. So when you add that up, oh well, that's only an 80. So and if someone's just a little bit below that, then you're in the 70s. So you don't really even see movies ever hit close to as high as games get. So it's just like a weird system, but yeah, it's unfortunately, it's better just to find the reviewers or find people that you feel like play like the same type of things you like. And that's what a lot of people do. And you go to those YouTubers that like, hey, I follow you, haven't strayed me wrong in the past, so cool, you like that game, cool, I'm probably gonna like it too. Actually listen to the person's review versus just looking at the score and then, okay, cool, I'm gonna like it. Kind of like what a lot of people found out with Elden Ring. Oh, it's a 97. Oh, cool, I'm gonna go get it. Oh crap, this is a Souls game. Well, you should have read the review. You'd probably figure that out.
Yeah, good point actually. Basically, yeah, same thing. I agree with what you said, Shockley. I like to find people that, again, you have similar tastes. Everybody seems to have like, a couple of, whether it be YouTubers or journalists or whatnot, that they just stick to for, again, trusted opinions, ones with similar tastes and so on. So, I would say, again, just, stick to what you're comfortable with. Don't necessarily follow, the numbers per se. But again, on that though, I mean, it is nice to see, Xbox Game Studios doing well in any case. Again, Xbox came out number 1 here on their chart, Bethesda was at number 5, and interestingly enough, Activision was at number 4 in the list. But again, they didn't really have too many games per se. There was the Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remaster, Crash 4. Those did well. It just Call of Duty Vanguard kind of was, well, a critically, like, I mean, it still sold really well. It's one of the best sold games in the year. It kind of got critically panned in a lot of ways. But I think, with Xbox taking over, hopefully the deal goes through. But I think you'll see a lot of quality improvements going forward. Or at least that's the hope there anyways. But I don't know, guys. Either way, it is good seeing these Metacritic charts and to just see Xbox doing well overall. I mean, I think that it's a good sign anyways. And again, I can't really say much about this year, but I think they'll finish off strong. And I think 2023 is, well, looking at their timetable, is going to be a spectacular year. All right, next over to some studio-specific talk, something that actually the panel was talking about before the show started. And over the past few days, there's been articles coming out about the initiative, specifically a dev overseeing Perfect Dark. Well, some sleuths were looking at LinkedIn, and it appears that the game's director has moved on to other pastures, other things, that person being Dan Newberger. And to be fair, that, it's always like eye-catching when you see like a prominent member of a studio leaving a project. But, I mean, there are... there's time framing and so on. Just because you see somebody leave and the game's not out yet doesn't mean that they didn't do their part. But again, we'll get into that. Shockley, buddy, should we be concerned over this game director leaving, or is this just like a natural phase of game development?
Yeah, with this one, I think that's just kind of like a natural phase. I mean, it's also been like 4 something years since he's been there. And if you think about it with the creative director, like they're kind of setting the stage of like, okay, here's the scope. Kind of like when we saw Drew Murray, who was the previous one. You saw him in the, he was the first one telling us like, what this game was, kind of like what their idea around this world, like how they were gonna go from the N64 games or the 360 sequel to like this and really evolve this world into something more like modern or something more realistic. So I think a lot of that groundwork's been done. So it's not like, hey, they just started this project last year and then the creative like it's been a few years. And especially now that they're on more of the, hey, cool, because initiative, like even with their name, they said it from the get-go, they're staying small and agile. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like what their goal is to like, hey, be able to make more projects quickly, set up of, oh, cool, this is the game we want, here's everything that's needed. It's kind of like when you need to get labor, like, hey, I've invented this product, cool, I just need to find a manufacturer in China to make this new gadget. Cool, I found a supplier. So it's kind of like, that's kind of where Crystal Dynamics is coming in, because they have the manpower. They are a AAA studio. They have the manpower, and that's what they need. Initiative still isn't like to that level of being able to grow, and it's hard for them to also do that. Probably also during the pandemic to grow to that size that quickly. So this kind of allows them to, hey, cool, we got our idea, we got everything, the world, everything that we want about this game. We just need manpower to go in there and actually create what we've laid out. So if that's their goal, they don't need, probably the creative director to, because we don't know what their whole deal is. But at a certain point, when somebody's contract is up or whenever they're done or not needed, if they're not moving on to a project right away, that's where someone might leave to move up to a different position. Kind of like how Drew, when he first came over to Drew Murray, when he came over to the initiative, he was taking on this new project. He was probably given a lot more leeway and just like lead of this project, because Daryl Gallagher was kind of like managing the studio. So I think that's probably why he came here, because he was like, oh, cool, this seems like a great opportunity where I get probably even more, freedom of like imprinting my, creative prowess on this game than he probably was at Insomniac, just because it was something new. Like you're one of the first ones there, so you're going to have a lot of say in what goes. So I don't, and I think the other guy that just left, he's been there quite from the get-go, or pretty close to it. And I think he was probably when Drew kind of stepped away abruptly, because I think it was right after his brother had died, and he said it was for personal reasons. So, seems like that could have been one of those personal reasons that he was referring to. So that they probably didn't expect him to step away that quickly, but given the circumstances, and he didn't go straight to Insomniac. He, laid low for, I think it was a few months before they probably said, hey, here we got something. You don't have to be like the lead of this, our next game, but hey. And then he felt comfortable and went there. But I think the guy that just left, he was probably like, they needed somebody to, continue on with next week's, with that position. So kind of like how Chris Lee had to step in, with Halo, we heard all the turmoil that was going over there. But, you need somebody to take over if someone has to step away. So, I mean, and we haven't seen anything to say that, oh, it's bad, or we haven't heard anything to say otherwise. So to just assume that, oh, the creative director left, it's kind of like when Amy Hennig left. It's like to just say, hey, the next Uncharted 4 is going to be a complete shit show. Like, based off what? So you're just assuming and just talking out of your ass if you say either way. So, I mean, and at this point, Crystal Dynamics is in there partnering with them to get all the, get all that labor, get everything put into place. They have the manpower. If Daryl Gallagher had left, I'd be more worried about that. The actual lead that, we've seen what he did with, he actually made Tomb Raider a cool game to play. I'm sorry if you liked Tomb Raider before, but I hated Tomb Raider when I had it on PC back in the 90s. It was kind of cool, but it was like, cool, I'd rather go play back to Mario 64 because I hate whatever this is. But he made a Tomb Raider game that I really liked. So shout out to him. I didn't think that was possible. And then we've seen what he's rebooted. He's basically done what they're trying to do here. If he had left, then you could be a little bit more skeptical because he's the one, it's his brainchild basically of like the studio. So if he left, then that's the top leader. So it's like if Phil just left tomorrow and you're like, okay, crap. It's kind of like when, everybody left and Phil was just kind of the fill-in. And you're like, okay, where's Xbox going? Because the head, is actually just gone. There is no head. Mm-hmm. So that would be more worrisome. Whereas, there's plenty of talent to go around. People going from different, that's where they got a lot of these people from Sony Studios, from Rockstar Studios that came over, to the initiative to begin with. These were people from other talented people from other studios. So, I mean, I wouldn't be that too worried about it, unless we're seeing, hey, there's been a delay, and we don't hear anything about it for 2 more years. Then maybe if you don't hear anything about it, even at least an idea or more of a showing sometime this year at one of these shows, then you might worry, just because given that they wanted to show that teaser off at what was it? Was it the year prior? It was 2020, right?
Yeah, it was late Game Awards. Yeah.
So if you don't hear anything in sometime by the end of 2022 of one of their shows, at least just of an update, after they've already kind of updated it, like, hey, Crystal Dynamics has kind of come in, then you might want to say, like, okay, be worried. But I mean, this is, I don't know. There's nothing really to worry about. Someone's going to take over. There's not like, hey, there's only 2 good creative directors in the world. Like, it's just kind of stupid for everybody to be like, oh my God, and I know why people are doing it. most of it people are just doing it to get at other people. Like on Twitter, you see the people that are doing it is mostly fanboys that usually troll. You just look at their feed of like, okay, you're not actually sincere about what you're saying. We know why you're saying it. But
yeah, I don't think people are necessarily being too sincere. Like you said, people bring up like console war stuff. Oh, so and so left the studio, blah blah blah. No, I mean, like, we haven't heard anything negative about the initiative, like, like conditions at the studio or, just different workplace things or a lot of people leaving. Just, again, like, people come and go. This studio's been around since 2018. I could understand there was a slew of devs leaving at once or within a certain time period, but again, like, Drew Murray was, again, like that was a different story altogether. Like, he left like a year or so ago. The game director leaving right now. I mean, again, you look at the development time and when this game is possibly gonna get released. Again, we haven't seen any gameplay for it, but the initiative is working in tandem in partnership with Crystal Dynamics.
They did
big
give us that
studio.
update of like, hey, this is what we're doing. So
yeah. And like you said, it's supposed to be the smaller, lighter studio, or what was it, small and agile. They get it, again. They're the ones that shape it. They put everything in place, and it just seems like, again, Crystal Dynamics is going to be taking the reins to, like, again, finish off, tightening it up, and like getting everything down. But the basics are all in place. I find
I'd be more worried if Drew was still the lead. No, like the creative lead. If no one had left, but we heard Daryl Gallagher left, I'd be probably more worried about, hey, the head that kind of makes sure everything goes together. It's kind of like when you see like a coach, like you have the coach. So like if he's still there, if you just lost one player, or one piece, okay, I'm not losing my mind. Like, okay, they'll kind of rein things back in, get us to where we need to be. So had he left, then I'd be like, oh crap, the whole lead of the actual project and studio that brought all this talent and everybody together. Obviously that talent wanted to follow Daryl Gallagher, and that's how he got him in the first place, because he has a good pedigree and people wanted to come work for him. So he's going to find other talent. He's going to poach other people if he needs a new creative director to step in and really, hammer down on this title. So had he left, then I would have been like, cool, or I'd be more skeptical about that than the other way around. So.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it funny that people are picking this apart. There hasn't really been, again, a lot of issues with the initiative, but I mean, there haven't been any signs of like a quote unquote development hell. I mean, maybe you could say that about like Rare's Everwild, for example, because I know that's been going through. Well, again, there's been a lot of talk about that, people like leaving and coming in, and there's been issues with just how like the shape of the game has been turning. With Perfect Dark, I haven't heard any of that, so I think I mean personally that there's just a lot of nothing here per se. But I would like to get everybody's opinion on the panel. Crusader, like, what are your thoughts on this? Like, do you think that people are just making too much of a big deal over this person leaving, or is there possibly more to this?
So this can be a big deal. We have nothing to suggest that it is or isn't. It's kind of like a Schrodinger's cat kind of thing. Well, we won't know until someone opens the box, like a Jason Schreier opens the box, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be concerned personally. I've always thought that they were a studio that was going to kind of, like you said, they were going to kind of create the blueprint, and then some kind of external studio similar to like Behavior Interactive or Valkyrie or one of those outsourcing studios was going to assist with their development based on how they were talking. And I can't remember if it was Jeff Grubb or if it was Jez Corden. One of them had speculated that this might have been the design of the studio in the first place, was to get the groundwork up and running for like multiple games at a time and get like the core systems and like the core outlines of like what's going to happen, how, where, like the core writing and stuff like that. and outsource multiple projects at once to multiple external studios. And seeing like them partnering with Crystal Dynamics kind of, I don't want to say proves that, but it leads you more in that direction of that might be what's happening. And, you know, when you see, because this is a big name person who left. I can't remember exactly what he did, but he was a rather talented person. But, you know, the initiative is kind of designed to be like the Harlem Globetrotters of game development, right? That they were supposed to be some of the top talent that they could hire across the industry. Like everyone at that studio has like a massive amount of pedigree behind them. So, you know, you hear big name has left the studio and you're like, oh no, and you're like, wait, there's still like 50 more big names at the studio. Like it means like almost nothing. Yeah, if we were hearing a mass exodus of people leaving, and then the other thing is Microsoft has this is a Microsoft founded subsidiary, which means it's subject to Microsoft's stupid hiring practices. If you don't know, Microsoft has rules like if you're a contract worker, you can only work there for like 16 months, and then you can't work there for like 12 months, and then you can come back. And if you're not a contract worker, it's not as stupid. But like, so like you see a lot of people they'll come for a year, they'll work for a year, and then they'll leave. And in a normal studio, that kind of mass exodus would scare people, but at a Microsoft subsidiary like 343 or Perfect Dark, you're just going to naturally see that because that's Microsoft's hiring studio. And I'm hoping that with Phil being the CEO of gaming or whatever his new title was that they announced, that they're going to break away from Microsoft a little bit in that regard. Like they're going to be able to set up their own rules similar to how like the acquired subsidiaries operate. Like Bethesda that won't have those rules. LinkedIn doesn't have those kind of hiring rules and things like that. Microsoft's a really weird company when it comes to nonsense with hiring and development. That's part of the reason why, we saw the problems with Halo Infinite. You have a 5-year development cycle for a game, but you're only keeping your contracted workers for a year. It's stupid. So hopefully we're getting away from that. It looks like the initiative has mostly not contract workers because of its nature of being small and hiring the really like high quality people. They would want them for more than a year. So I also don't think that's going to be an issue with this studio. I really think that this is just more of a nothing burger than anything. And I would like to talk about one thing that Shock said with the trailer being shown. What was it? Was it 2020?
Yeah, it was 2020 Video Game Awards.
Microsoft does this thing with their games where they announce them way ahead of time, specifically again for hiring purposes. There was a 343 lead dev who actually talked about it. They announced Halo Infinite years and years in advance. If you remember the Slip Space trailer,
yep,
where they showed off some of the tech, that trailer was made not even really for the fans. It was made to hire people because it is easier to hire workers when you can directly just say this is what you're going to be working on. So if you just show the whole world that a new Halo's coming out in 5 years and we're grabbing up people now, it's a lot easier to hire. That's why you've seen so many games announced that they're saying, yeah, this is exceptionally early in the game's life cycle. Like we saw that with Knights of the Old Republic remake. Knights of the Old Republic remake's not expected until like 2024, right? Or 2023 at the earliest.
Well, even like
they announced
Dragon
it.
Age.
Yeah, Dragon Age is another one. And Mass Effect. Mass Effect's a huge one for BioWare.
Yeah.
They announced that way ahead of time. One, to satiate Mass Effect fans like me. If you can't tell I'm a Mass Effect fan by my picture, I don't know what to tell you. But they announced that ahead of time because the industry's so competitive for hiring right now. Because there are so many studios making games. Games take so many people to make that, if there's if there's someone that you could hire because they want to work on a Mass Effect or they want to work on a Perfect Dark, then they're just saying it now. You know, they announced like how many Star Wars games is Respawn working on? They announced like 3 of them
Yeah,
a
something
couple
like that.
weeks ago. They're announcing them like that because they need to get, you know, everyone loves Star Wars. You know what I mean? People want to work on Star Wars, so you announce it, you hire people, and that's what I see with the Perfect Dark trailer being announced so early. That's what I see with Avowed being announced so early.
Yes, about.
Everwild announced so early. Now, granted, that game's in, you know, we've heard it's in an interesting position.
Everwild, to be fair, is in a much
yeah.
different position. Yeah.
I still think that that's why they announced it so early, though, was hiring. Come work on this really pretty game that's in super early development. So I'm not so worried that even if we didn't see Perfect Dark in 2022, I think we will, but even if we didn't, I wouldn't be like, oh god, it's in rough shape.
I think
Just
you might see. Look at the timetable. The year before that, they showed us the teaser that wasn't even like, I guess, gameplay at all for Hellblade.
Yeah.
And we just saw gameplay of Hellblade. So this came out, the teaser, a year later. And so we might see gameplay, you know, if we're going by the same timetable.
Yep. My only pushback against that would be that the initiative's such a new studio that the fact that this is their first game may affect that timetable a bit. I would expect to see Avowed this year, though, based on that same timetable rule. Didn't we see that in 2020 as well?
There's a few.
There's a few.
I think we saw it at the E3 of 2020.
So,
and I think Obsidian showed them that when Microsoft decided to purchase them. At least that's what people have said. Like, that's the game. They're like, oh shit, okay, cool.
From what I've heard, it wasn't so much that, it's that they pitched it. Phil came up to them and said, if you had a bigger budget than you've ever had, the budget you'd need to make your dream game, what would your dream game be? And they pitched it to him, and he was like, done. And I'm so excited. They love Pillars of Eternity. I'm excited for that universe to get a first-person RPG game. If you like CRPGs, Pillars of Eternity, fantastic.
Yeah, I dabbled in it. It's cool. It's pretty cool, yeah.
But yeah, so I'm really, really not concerned about the hiring things. It's cool to follow the hirings and the leavings, and who knows? You know, maybe. Do we know where this guy went?
No, he hasn't gone anywhere. The only reason we know about it is because people were looking at his LinkedIn, and his LinkedIn was showing that he was looking for work. And that he left.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, there was no announcement. People were just like keeping up on where
maybe
people
he
go.
had to move. You know, we don't know why he left. You know, maybe there was trouble in his family. Someone passed away, and he needed to move back home to take care of like a parent or something. That's just a complete conjecture.
And this wasn't even his original role. Like that was Drew's role. He stepped in.
So we have no idea why he left. We have no idea anything about the studio.
Again, he's been with the studio since 2018, so it's not like this is somebody who's only been there for like a year. He's been there for a considerable amount of time, so I'm not too concerned.
That's what happened with the Halo, where you saw that one lady come in for like, she was there for like 2 or 3 months and left. I forget her name, because it was the writer that left, and then someone, I think, that replaced the original writer from like Halo 5 that had left during Halo Infinite development. I forget her name. She stepped in or got hired, and then she left like 2 or 3 months later, and people were like saying the same things, which there was issues there.
Yeah.
And like I said, even with like 1 year leavings, Microsoft's such a stupid company with the contracted. If they were just on a contract thing, like a contracted work thing, they would be leaving after a year, guaranteed. Yeah. So it's cool to follow these, that if you like certain studios and you like to see the cross-germination of talent going across different studios, or you like particular developers and want to see where they're going, this is a cool thing to follow. But don't ever get wrapped up in, unless you see a mass exodus, or you hear about problems like Activision Blizzard or Ubisoft with harassment. that's when you get concerned about people leaving. You know, it, I think it.
Yeah. And like I said before, if Daryl left, that would have been like, oh shit, the whole head, the one that, pitched the whole project. Because I think that's how Daryl got hired when he was sitting there with Phil. That like, hey, what do you think about, rebooting this? And then he gave his pitch on like Perfect Dark and what he would want to do with it. So if he left, the whole person with the brainchild around this project, that's when I'd be like, even if, like I was saying before, if Drew left and all that talent was still there and the head left, then I would be like, cool, well, where's the direction this is going? Then I would be like, okay, well, who's replacing him and what direction is it now going? Because it doesn't matter what your talent is. It matters what your talent is, but also if your head leaves, then the direction that talent's going to work on stuff might go a different direction. Like, so I've seen what Gallagher did with Tomb Raider, and again, they didn't make the third one. That was Eidos. So the two ones that everybody loves, the reboot and the Rise of the Tomb Raider, that was Daryl. So
right,
sounds like he's hitting, hit after hit here. So I got my faith in him until he messes up, at least.
Centurion Pal, I would love to know your thoughts on this. Obviously, sharing the thoughts here about, a couple of us have shared about what we think's going on here at the initiative. Do you think that this is just, like a common thing? Like, oh, he's just going to another studio. He's completed his, what he's been sent out to do. Or, do you think there's some other stuff going on?
I want to say at least there's no alarm bells going off in my head. It seems to be a very common thing in gaming development. We see it all the time on Twitter and other forums of the internet that one developer has started working for this new company, or this developer left that company and is now over here. It seems to be very commonplace. And like Shockley touched on, Gallagher is still there. Gallagher has done a wonderful job rebooting the Tomb Raider series. I really feel that he revitalized that series for me. I feel that it was actually becoming a little bland and repetitive in nature. The original Lara Croft Tomb Raider games, they were just somehow the same thing over and over again. And then he just gave a really good, fresh perspective on Tomb Raider, which I really feel re-energized the whole franchise, and I really hope that he's going to do that with Perfect Dark. And at least at this point, I feel that there's no alarm bells going off in my head. I really do feel that this, when I read the articles, it said that he did this for personal reasons. It might not have anything to do with what's going on over at the initiative at all. Maybe this guy just wanted to spend more time with his family and he found something to do that. I mean, you got to remember, there is some people out there where there's just more deeper priorities than their professional life, especially if you're very successful in your professional life. I mean, I hate to say his name. Look at Jeff Bezos, the guy that did Amazon. He's starting to go on, and tackle things because, he did Amazon and he's wanting to kind of go off and do other things. And that could be said for any individual. So we don't really know what the real logical thinking was. The individual said it was all for personal reasons. And I don't really think it had anything to do with what's going on company wide with the initiative. And like Shockley also said, they got Crystal Dynamics there. They already have their labor force. Daryl Gallagher is there to keep the ball rolling, to keep that train going down the tracks, because he already knows the direction that they're going. And I just really don't feel this is that big of a deal, unless somehow something else, or it doesn't sound like development hell.
Yeah, and that's a fair thing to say. Like, if I heard a lot of news like dropping about the initiative, oh, there's these things, these negative things going on at the studio, or if there was developers speaking out about something, or again, mass employees leaving at a certain period of time, then yeah, you know what, I would say, there's something wrong with the development here. Things probably aren't going smoothly, but I don't see that with the initiative. Again, they're also a different kind of studio too. They seem more of like an incubator, and are gonna, again, once they set the foundations in stone, they'll give it out to a studio like a Crystal Dynamics, which again, very good studio has a pretty decent track record, although the Avengers didn't do that great. But I think I blame more Square with that one, especially with microtransactions. But that's for another conversation entirely. Perfect Dark seems, from the sounds of things, to be in good hands. I can't wait to see the actual gameplay and so on. But again, I haven't seen anything negative about the studio. One person leaving isn't, it's not the end of the world. And he's been there for a long period of time. I can't say that I'm worried. I just want to see gameplay. I want to see gameplay, and I don't like overall things seem to be going pretty well with the initiative, especially with what like Phil and Matt Booty and other higher ups have to say about the studio. I'm pretty positive. I'm pretty positive going forward, and I don't think that this is just seems like a regular thing that happens with studios overall. So I'm not too concerned. Hey guys, tuning in, just remember to share this show out and drop a like if you're enjoying the conversation. I see you all chatting there. It's great to have you here as always. I just thought I'd point that out before we move on. All right, on to our fourth and final talking point of the night, fellas. And it seems like Bethesda are prepping up for something. Eagle-eyed spotters noticed a renewed trademark for something called SpyTeam. Something that I'll admit, I didn't know about this, never heard of it before, but it's a renewed trademark. You know what, Crusader, I'll hit you up on this one. We know that Bethesda is aiming to release Starfield later this year, and it'll probably have a huge marketing push from Xbox Game Studios. But with this trademark, do you think we'll be hearing like a new game announcement in the near future about this?
So, come back to me. I'm trying to find an article on Reddit. Evidently, there was a leak about this about a year ago. I remember seeing it the other day. So come back to me.
All right.
Go to someone else first, if you would. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. That's no problem. Actually, yeah. It's funny you mentioned that too, because I was looking at an article. I had no idea that this was a thing up until now. So yeah, definitely take a look. Let's Centurion. I don't know if you've been taking a look at this. Again, it's kind of news to me. This SpyTeam trademark. Do you have any thoughts on this trademark? Do you think that it's possible that we could hear an announcement for a new title? Like, do you have any thoughts on what this game could possibly be? Please give me your insight.
I'm going to say I really don't know. I have never heard of SpyTeam. I don't know what's going on with that. I think excuse me, I think that the article that Crusader is talking about was, I guess, like there was like a rumored Bethesda, Montreal, and Austin may be working on some kind of new game, and that was an article that took place in November of 2020. And definitely Bethesda is definitely working on something. ZeniMax, whatever you want to call them. I'm very, very curious. We're not talking. Let's just say Bethesda ZeniMax is not known for working off of like offshoot games and creating low budget stuff. So I really don't know what this could be. I'm going to be absolutely honest, but it's definitely good to hear that these studios are working on all sorts of things that we have no idea what's going on, and that we really cannot just always just assume that we know everything.
Yeah, that's fair. There have been different job listings that have been like shown, screenshotted. I've seen some for Bethesda Montreal that they're working on some type of a game that hasn't been announced yet, which again, pretty interesting in itself. However, I mean, this could be related to, there's other job listings that got posted too. I think there was a LinkedIn as well, another one that got spotted suggesting a third-person shooter in development at Roundhouse Studios. That could be another possibility. Yeah, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. Shockley, buddy, I don't know. Do you have any input on this? I don't know if you've seen any of the different like the information put out. Like, what do you think Spy Team could be? Like, do you think that it's possibly based off of an old property? Like, I'm seeing from what I'm seeing, it could be based on a major comic license from what a different LinkedIn resumes saying. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't know any comic that is called Spy Team or what it could be based on. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was seeing the same thing with I guess that human head that made like the original Prey. And man, that Prey 2, that first teaser.
Yes.
I'm still mad that they didn't
Ditto.
make that vision. But yeah, I guess it's supposed to be potentially a PvE third person shooter based off. Yeah, I haven't heard of that comic license before. But yeah, that's as much as I would know on it. But I mean, I haven't played most of any Human Heads now, obviously, because I don't know if Roundhouse has released a game since Human Head got turned into Roundhouse.
They have not.
They released.
They don't even have anything else.
I thought they released a game called Rune, if I'm not mistaken.
They were supposed to be developing it. They ended up having like Bethesda performed a hostile takeover of the company, which is not as bad as it sounds. The company wanted to be bought, but
Right.
They had to get out of like a shareholders agreement. So the workers all essentially quit their jobs at Human Head and formed a new studio in the same building and formed Roundhouse, and Bethesda bought Roundhouse. It was a really sketchy situation legally. No one ever got sued or anything, but it was a very sketchy situation. That game ended up getting finished by another company that that was the publisher worked with. They all of those assets went to that other company. So under Bethesda, Roundhouse has not released a game. They don't have anything announced. They don't even have like a Wikipedia page or anything. They're very like elusive to track down anything about. The only concrete rumor, and I use the word concrete very likely, is that they could be working on a Planet of the Apes game, but that's a very like there was like no sourcing or anything like that, and that rumor came out around the same time that they announced Machine Games was working on Indiana Jones. So that's the only thing I can say about Roundhouse. I had actually completely missed this Spy Team thing a year ago when it was announced, but yeah,
I guess it's not a comic.
Who said it.
It's just a new IP that they've been working on.
Well, there's a rumor, like again, rumors, there's all kinds of rumors, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like a comic called Spy Team. I mean, look at, for example, Injustice, right? It's based around the DC universe, for example, but you wouldn't know if it was like, Batman or something, and so it could be something it could be a well-known property just called something like, again, that's very mysterious.
Yeah, because we don't know what it is working on currently. There's rumors that it could be Quake. Machine Games is tied down in Indiana Jones, and it looks like Wolfenstein 3 perhaps is in early development. We don't know.
Presumably.
Bethesda Softworks has, or not Softworks, Bethesda Game Studios has 4 locations. One is working on Fallout 76 extended support. The other 3 in some combination are working on their own game and Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield. Starfield being the predominant one currently. Alpha Dog Studio is a mobile studio, so I'm just going to ignore them. Tango has upwards of, including Ghostwire Tokyo, 3 games in development.
Yeah, that's correct. They had mentioned that recently. They
said that they have 2 other games in development. So we don't know what they're working on. And then ZeniMax Online could also be working on something. We know that they have an unannounced new IP in development. We have no idea what it's going to be. As well as Elder Scrolls Online continued support. We're not even sure if the next game is going to be an MMO. It's just going to have some kind of online features.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really hard to tackle down any kind of information about Bethesda currently, because they don't use the same online reporting system as Microsoft. I'm pretty sure that's how most of the stuff gets leaked with Microsoft, because like all of the stuff gets sent through the same like one channel and someone leaks it all. But Bethesda's not on that same web service channel, so that's why like Jez Corden doesn't have good sourcing on Bethesda. Same with like Jeff Grubb.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason they knew about what was that game? What can I think of it? We were talking about it earlier. The one from Arcane.
Redfall.
Redfall. The only reason they knew about that was they got access to the trailer for Redfall months early, because it went through Microsoft's internal channels, because it was getting ready for the presentation showcase.
Oh, all right.
That's the only reason they knew about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's why we might get some more Bethesda leaks and rumors soon, because they'll be starting to build that showcase in earnest right now.
Mm-hmm.
It takes months and months to coordinate the creation of all the trailers and stuff for that. Because people think, oh, the E3 showcase, it's just a bunch of trailers. It's like, yeah, all those trailers got to be in development for some time. They'll have to get reviewed. They might want some stuff edited or changed to make it flashier because it's just an advertising thing. It's just to sell the stuff to the consumer or to get people to come work for them. But yeah, no, this SpyTeam thing, I've heard Spy Kids. Someone was saying like it could be a Spy Kids game. Because aren't they rebooting Spy Kids? That old movie series?
I'll be honest, I really don't know. I'd have to take a look at that.
I heard that they were rebooting that movie series.
Oh God.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, that would be an interesting game movie to.
That'd be an interesting game for Bethesda ZeniMax to be doing. I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Untitled Spy Kids film for 2022 on IMDb.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to look it up now, but I'll be honest.
I'll put it in the chat.
I hope not, to be honest with you, because I don't think that would get anybody to be like, oh, the Spy
I don't
Kids.
think it would either.
So I don't know. I kind of want to shoot that down, but that is kind of interesting that you bring that up. But I don't know.
They could make some weird like ZeniMax Online could make some kind of weird like multiplayer spy game for an E10 audience. Like it wouldn't be something that like we would be interested in, but people have always said that that's something that Microsoft lacks, is a kid-friendly lineup. You know what I mean? Like They have Minecraft and they have Sea of
Make a
Thieves.
kid-friendly game, like make Banjo-Kazooie. Make a new one.
I know, I would kill for
like Mario. It's still fun to play for like adults. Don't make Spy Kids for the love. Those weren't even good movies as a kid.
And based on when the trademark was originally filed, this deal would have been made before Microsoft. Anyways. Because the original rumor was from 2020, November of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been made after the deal had been presented, but before it had gone through.
Well, again, this trademark is a renewed trademark, and I did see the listing from 2018.
Oh, so yeah, then it would go back even further.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So who knows? That would, if it's from 2018, that eliminates Roundhouse, because Roundhouse was acquired in 2019 by Bethesda, by ZeniMax.
Maybe. I mean, again, I've seen different listings pop up. I mean, it's like I did see something about Bethesda Montreal mentioned, but then some things intertwine with what Roundhouse is doing. So it's really hard to. It's very elusive to say the least. This
Yeah.
this title.
Yep.
Like, it's very interesting to talk, like, have a conversation about it. Like, again, guys, we don't know like much about this, if anything, but just when we saw all this information kind of popping up about the trademark and about which studios may or may not be connected to it, it does get you thinking of, oh, you know, what kind of game is this? Is it third person? I mean, that there are different things coming up in the LinkedIn and so on. And when we see this renewed trademark, again, it gets my brain kind of pumping here. It's like, oh, well, you know, with this trademark, it's, you know, we're coming into April and so on. It's like, you know, could they be announcing something come June or at the Bethesda show? You never know. You never know. I do think that the timing is about right. We may hear something quite soon about this game. So, but yeah, it just overall just very interesting to talk about this trademark. Anybody else have anything to add before we, well, I guess close off the night? Yes, no? All right. I'll take that as a no. Well, guys, I think with that all said, it's a good time to start ending off tonight's offerings, and good times tonight with the panel talking, well, all things Xbox, pretty much. To all of you listening in, thank you for stopping by. You're all really appreciated and awesome, and we love seeing you all here. If you did enjoy tonight's banter, then consider dropping a like, subbing to the channel, and sharing this out across the internet. Again, not to be shilling, but it does help out with YouTube's algorithms when you do that kind of stuff. So again, thank you very much. Anyways, let's go to the outros, starting off with our fantastic guest tonight, Crusader. Buddy, hey, it's always a pleasure having you on and sharing your perspectives on the gaming sphere. Where can everybody follow you at?
They can follow me at Crusader3456 on Twitter and u/Crusader3456 on Reddit, where I am very active on r/gaming leaks and rumors. You want to add me on any of the gaming platforms? All of my stuff is in my bio on Twitter.
All right, you heard him. Check it out, people. Moving on to the TXR regulars. Eric, buddy, good stuff tonight. I really enjoyed, again, your own perspectives, your opinions, and so on. Very insightful. Where can these wonderful people follow you at?
Yeah, as always, you can find me at ShockNero on Twitter, Easy Shock on Xbox Live. But yeah, good show tonight. Thanks for Crusader stopping by, since we're especially a little short this month. I know I was a little late last week, so. But thanks for stopping by. Good show.
Yeah, indeed. And moving on over to Centurion. Buddy, great show tonight as per usual. Love your thoughts and opinions. Where can these fine people follow you at?
Thank you guys. It was another great Sunday night. Thank you to everybody who turned out in the chat and listens to the show afterwards. For those who do want to find me, you can locate me at Centurion1307 right here on YouTube, Xbox Live, and of course Twitter. And you can also locate me here every Sunday night right here on the TXR Podcast with these fine gentlemen. And thank you to Crusader once again, another fine guest. It's always a blast to be able to conversate with you.
Thank you, guys.
Agreed wholeheartedly on that. And hey, as you know, this is Invader. You all can find my content over on YouTube at Invader Gaming, also on BitChute Invader Gaming, and many other alternative sites. Also, check me out on Twitter at Invader_1986. The Invaders everywhere, people. Thank you all for stopping by tonight. We all look forward to seeing you all back here again for the next show. Fantastic night. Thank you, everyone in the chat, for coming out. Later, folks. It's been a good one.